Hope everyone out there is doing well, staying healthy. I'm open for questions whenever you wanna get rolling here.
Hey, Sal, see you started off.
Okay, thank you very much, Kadir. Coach, how are you? Good to see you again. Sal Capaccio from WGR. Hope your family is well.
Thanks, Sal. Hope you are also, and staying active though at the same time.
Trying
I know
to.
you got to stay in shape over there.
Trying to for sure. I'd like to ask you about the climate of the country and what's going on, and if you've had discussions with your team as a team, of what you've done, maybe individually, any steps you've taken to kind of address what's going on with the team as a whole, with what's happening in the country right now.
Right, we have. So we discussed it as a team on, I believe it was on Monday, and I know that Pagula has also put out a statement. So I think just overall, it's I'm disappointed, and just to give you the general gist of what I shared with the team is that I was disappointed, and as a coach in the National Football League, or for any matter, I know that this hits very close to home, or hits directly at home for a lot of the guys on our football team. And when we talk about doing things the right way, and I just feel strongly about, I think right now as a country we need to unify, and there's been obviously through this situation and other situations, there's a divide, and I think that we as a country need to come together. And part of the reason why we share stories in our culture, in our building, is to learn about one another. And with that comes certainly some differences, but with that also comes a lot of similarities between people. And I think together, I hope that our team can be a unifying picture of what it should look like. I really believe that. I really do. And we've got, as we've been in the community, and we believe in that. We believe in doing things in the community that are right. And I've tried to open myself up to our players to be listening, a good listener in this case. And I think that's important, to educate myself and build awareness. And at the same time, lead our team and our family through this. And then as you've heard me talk about before, and it's important, as far as my faith goes, is the love that we are to have for one another. And that's not just inside our building, but that's in the world also. And so that was kind of the general gist of what I shared with the team. And it's obviously something that we take very seriously, and so I'm a big believer in doing things right, and I'm also a big believer in loving one another.
Thank you, Coach.
Sure.
Adam, you can go, man.
Okay, all right, thank you. Hey, Sean, Adam Benini, WGRZ. Thanks for taking the time to do this. Just to follow up with that, did you have any reaction to what took place here in Buffalo?
Good to see you, Adam, as well. I'll start that way. Yeah, I mean, listen, obviously what I know that there were, protests and certainly some things escalated as to what I've been told and what I've become aware of, and as Kim and Terry put out in their statement, and as I shared with our team, I don't think there's I don't think there's any place for that, as far as the violence. And what we've got to do right now as a country is again unify and make really good decisions and use that energy to make good decisions. And I know there's a lot, emotions are very high right now, and that's to be expected. As I share with our players, let's channel that energy to do good in our communities.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, Marcel from ESPN. How you doing?
Good, Marcel. Good to see you as well.
Thank you. Two-part question. The first, what was your immediate reaction when the video came out of George Floyd's murder at the hands of Minneapolis police?
Yeah, I was disgusted by it, and ashamed, as I share with our players. Just as human beings, right? Just as human beings, we're all human, and I share with our players, we're professional coaches, professional football players. At the end of the day, we're human beings. And so, yeah, I was disappointed and disgusted and ashamed.
And going off that, I know you've had discussions with your team, with your players, and I know that you think that we need to unify, but what is it that you've heard from them? What is it that you've learned from them after these discussions over the past week?
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm not the only one that's that's listening, and I'm not the only one involved in these conversations with our team. And we've got a great support staff, and our development team, as we call them, has done a great job in communicating with our players, our coaches. So I guess the point I'm trying to make, Marcel, is it's not just me, it's our collective team trying to do our best to communicate, and be good listeners and be there for our players. We have a social justice initiative, as you know. I believe you know that. I know you just came on board last year, but those conversations continue this week, and we need to continue to take steps to improve things, and that's what we're committed to, as Kim and Terry have mentioned, and from a leadership standpoint, we all appreciate that.
No, and I appreciate it as well. I meant more along the lines of, though, what is it that you've been hearing from your players? Like, what kind of messages have they been conveying to you, to the staff, to everybody that's reached out?
Yeah, I mean, listen, number one is I want to keep those conversations amongst the team, but overall, I can give you the general gist is again, a lot of emotions, running the gamut of emotions. For some, it hits all of us, but for some, it hits very close to home, and for others, it hits close. And so it's what you'd expect, Marcel. I'm sure very much like emotions that you've been a part of and seen and heard around the country.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Sean. Great to see you and hear you, at least in this format, and hope you and your family are well. And we do thank you for, it means a lot that you're taking the time to do this with us. So the NFL made its decision announcement yesterday about all teams practicing at their facilities. You were one of the 10 that had remote site, and you won't, obviously, this year. So first is, how much of you were a proponent of this idea of camaraderie building, all the things that being away from the facility and at Fisher did for the team. So if you could address now what it means to not have that, know that you're not going to have that, then I'll have a follow-up on that.
Yeah, Jay, or Vic, good to see you also, excuse me. And I hope your family's well also. And it is great to see everyone. I know it's been a while, and it's nice to be able to come together. To answer your question, Vic, I've spoken about this before. I think there was a lot of question as to early on whether Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane were proponents of going away to training camp. I think there was for some reason, mixed messaging early. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, I've always been a proponent of going away. I think we're one of the few teams that still do go away, and so I just believe in that for a lot of reasons, Vic. One of which is getting away, I think, builds fellowship and camaraderie, and you share an experience, and anytime you can share an experience, I think that bodes well for building community, chemistry, and the like, which are so important, in my opinion, to building a good team. So, but understanding, obviously, this is a situation that we've got to do in terms of taking best measures to keep everyone as safe and healthy as possible. And so I support it. I respect the fact that the NFL has a vision and has the foresight to get out in front of things so that from a planning purpose, we can plan accordingly.
And as a follow-up, and it ties into what the first few questions you were asked to address regarding what is dominating our lives right now, and how important it sounds clearly for you, this team, to discuss that. But you've been doing that, I'm presuming, like this, like in a video conference virtual setting, which is fine. You can hear each other talk. But to your earlier points about the importance of being together, being at camp, I feel like now more than ever, missing that is probably not the best thing, my view. But if you could share yours on how that might impact not only that, but the fact that we're looking at another full, possibly 2 months. I know I'm speculating, but 2 months conceivably where you're not going to be around players until like whatever a training camp is, whenever it is. So if you could, kind of tie that into this different offseason altogether, where you've been trying to do the managing of a team from a distance, and like you were saying, how important it is to talk out these very major issues that affect the team and affect the players and affect you.
Well, that's a lot, Vic. That's a long question, and you may get a long answer, more than you want, maybe.
That's okay.
I respect that. Yeah, listen, I think there's, this has certainly been a event-packed off season, right? Just in terms of the things that continue to happen. My biggest answer with that is what do you do with it? And to me, it comes back to leadership, right? And that's my job, and that's also the job of the veterans on our football team. It's their team, and I've got to take ownership. They have to take ownership and find a way to navigate everything that's happened and adjust. And I'm confident, I really am. I'm confident that we will do that. We've got guys on our team that are built and wired that they've overcome adverse times before, as have I, and so as has Brandon. And so does that mean it's going to be easy? No. Does that mean that that the world right now is easy? No. And we all need leadership, and our football team needs leadership, and so that's what we plan on doing. Is the leaders of our football team, myself included, plan on leading us through these times.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Vic.
Hey, Sean, Heather Pruzek here from WIVB here in Buffalo. Thanks for doing this. Hope you're still staying safe and healthy. Good to see you. I just wanted to ask you, because we haven't gotten a chance to talk to you since then, what's the situation regarding Ed Oliver, and, just what do you make of his arrest in Texas?
Yeah, we've spoken with Ed. Heather, good to see you also, I should say, and nice to be back. Yeah, it's a situation we take seriously, like all situations under that umbrella. And we have spoken with Ed, and where we are now is allowing the legal process to run its course. And so I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Hey, Coach. Hope you're doing well. We got to see the embedded videos that came out a couple weeks ago now. And when they were showing some video of Gabe Davis, and in his interview, he talked about Coach Dayball and how Coach Dayball is always wanting to FaceTime players, and just the connection that Coach Dayball builds with his players. How have you seen that, just being on the same staff as Dayball? And maybe what have some players told you about the connection that Coach Dayball tries to build with his team through FaceTime?
Yeah, that's a good detail there, Maddie. There's a little bit of a running joke on our staff that Dayball doesn't call anyone; he just FaceTimes people. But it's been pretty cool to watch it unfold over this off season, because I've found myself now FaceTiming people instead of just calling them. And sometimes or weird surroundings, I guess, and I'll let you figure out what some of that looks like through the course of life. But yeah, I mean, I think the connection part is cool, right? With just we haven't been able to be together, and to be able to see faces certainly makes it more personal. And Vic was, I think, referring to this, like it's personal, right? And that's the best step we can take right now, but it still would certainly be better to be able to be in person, together with one another. But when you can see someone's face, I think it's beneficial to both sides, where we need this interaction as humans. And so, maybe Dayball was out in front of his times. It's a trailblazer.
Thanks, Coach.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, John Scott here. Glad to see you in general. It'd be nice to do it in person, but soon enough, right?
Yeah.
We saw that nearly every offensive skilled player, and even Deion Dawkins, were all down together in Florida this past week. How much involvement did you have in organizing that? How much were you aware of that? And just seeing that large of a group come together, especially in these times, what was your response to that?
Right. No, that was driven by our players, and driven by Josh Allen and the quarterback position. And the neat thing about that was that so many guys showed up, right? And that was not an easy thing to pull off, I got to believe. Josh was on the West Coast along with Matt, and Davis was in Texas, I believe, and Jake is on the East Coast. And so to get the quarterback position, again, we talk about leadership, right? To get the quarterback position, to pull all of that together, and for the guys to meet them, I know they were somewhere in Florida, I think was just outstanding, right? And a big step for Josh Allen and his leadership. I talked about player-driven leadership a few minutes ago. Just a phenomenal job. And I know you guys have probably all seen the picture or pictures that have come from that. I think it's a great, a great example, that visual of what our world needs to look like, right? With the guys smiling together, hands on each other's shoulders. I think that's a great snapshot for America.
Sean, Thad Brown, thanks again for doing this. Appreciate your time as always. I know you
Sure.
talked about a little bit when you addressed the camp moving from Rochester back to Buffalo this year, but when it comes to building the 2020 edition of the Bills, What do you miss? What will be lost by not being able to have that experience in Fisher, maybe more specifically?
Well, like I mentioned, that going away, when you're away, it just kind of frees you up a little bit, right? So specifically to kind of give you the look behind the curtain, when you're away at camp, and I know myself, it's a little bit of a different dynamic. When I'm away, when I go back to my room to go to bed, it's just me. It's not going home to my family, right? And I think there's a little bit of a pull for husbands and fathers and some of that, and that's all good when you're home, but when you're away, it is nice to have that. So what I found happens in those late nights or those off times is guys spend time in playing cards, playing dominoes, and so it just helps to build that connection. And what we did in the dorms up there is we set up kind of a mash area, if you will, in each entrance to each floor. So guys would also, those that don't want to play games can also, that want to get iced or rehab, can also get that there, and that kind of became a little bit of a community in and of itself, where guys can get to know one another, just laying on the ice table, getting extra treatment. And I think those kind of in between times, if you will, is where there's a lot of value in that and building our football team.
Who's the guy to stay away from when it comes to playing cards in the Bills?
I don't know. I don't go around those. The money that they throw around in some of those card games is way too high for me. I'll play for $1 here or there, but that's why they don't invite me, because I'm not a big time money guy like that in terms of willing to ante up that type of dollar.
Well, you can play in our game anytime then. That's about our speed here in the media.
Yeah, just like when we played golf, when I was on, I think I was on Josh and Jay's team, and we had some money when we did the media golf tournament the first year, and these guys were telling me how good they were, and then they let me down. So I held up my end of the deal, but those guys didn't hold up theirs. But that's all right. I've just never gone back to the tournament since then because of it.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Sean, thank you for doing this. I'm curious. You mentioned Josh's ability to get everybody to sort of come together in Florida. I'm curious what you're seeing from him with the Zoom meetings, and again, trying to be able to expand his leadership and, I guess, control the room, if you will.
Yeah, Mike, he continues to take critical steps in all those areas that you mentioned. Albeit it's a little different. The venue's different right now. His influence is still being felt through the Zoom meetings. As you mentioned, the example just last week, and also, I have a chance to dial in and listen in on some of the Zoom meetings, and I try and spread myself around. But I do spend some time in that quarterback room, and Josh is number one example that he is to the other guys. Is an example of his leadership. He's in there, he's dialed in, he's locked in with Coach Dorsey, and I would say really all of them are. It's been impressive if you had the chance and opportunity that I have to bounce in and out of different Zoom rooms or meeting rooms. It's the guys are locked in. The coaches are doing a phenomenal job. It's not, that part isn't easy either. Putting together your own meeting from home. You're basically your own IT guy. We have great IT support from Dan Evans, our IT director, and Jeff Moeller, our video director. But that said, at the end of the day, when the video goes down or you're having problems and you're in the middle of a meeting, you got to get it solved and fixed right there. So I just think our coaches, I've been extremely pleased with the effort they've put into it, as well as the creativity. I mean, we're in week whatever now. And so, as you guys know, Zooms were great getting started, and then I was like, this is pretty cool how we can do this. And after a while, the luster wears off, and so you got to find ways to continue to engage and keep guys dialed in, and they've done a great job of that.
If I could follow real quick, obviously meeting Stefon Diggs in person versus having to do this through Zoom, I'm just curious what your impressions are of the player and the person thus far.
Yeah, I've enjoyed myself. I know he's had a chance to interact with the players, some of them as well, via last weekend, what have you. For me, I've really enjoyed it. I think everyone. When you go back and you say, hey, trade, right? So what goes into that? And so we start with a clean slate, and I've enjoyed getting to know Stefan and getting to know a little bit about his background, a little bit about his family. I know he's a big workout guy, and I think just the like any good relationship, it has to start with building that trust, and it has to really begin with that trust begins with respect and mutual respect for one another. And I've enjoyed the fact that he's been been communicating with us and with me, and been in the meetings, and he's done a good job so far.
Thanks, Sean.
Sure, Mike.
Hey, Sean, Steve White. To kind of follow up Mike's question about Stephon Diggs.
What happened?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, Sean, John Warrow. Sorry, Steve. How you doing?
Good, John. How are you?
Good.
We'll get you in a second.
Yeah. Just to follow up on Josh Allen. How much? It's not. I'm sure you were expecting him to take these steps, but when it comes to him taking the bull by the horns and setting up and organizing these sessions, how encouraged are you to see him take those steps, take the bull by the horns, and take further ownership of his position?
Yeah, John, very encouraged, and it's a critical step that he took he took it upon himself and his own initiative to put this together. I'm sure it wasn't easy to put this type of thing together, just because let's just start with location. And so whether we're continue to be apart or like we are now, or when we come back together, this will be a feather in Josh's cap that he was able to do what he did. And you saw the response just in sheer numbers. And so that alone tells you what type of respect his teammates have for him, and what type of respect Josh has for his teammates. And again, I go back to that picture that's kind of stuck. That vision is stuck in my head. That's a great picture, albeit just the offense in some cases of our football team. And I'm extremely proud of the guys for what they did and how they did it.
And just to go back to the initial topic, I recall how much praise the players had for this team, for the Pegulas, for yourself, for the front office, in having an open discussion when it came to the decision on Colin Kaepernick kneeling. It seemed to bond that team further, given how many new pieces there were to that. There seemed to be a bonding at that point. How much did you feel how much did you learn from that? And how much did you maybe draw upon that moment in knowing you had to address this head on, this issue head on as it arose?
Yeah, it's a great question. John, I think, look, it's every experience you try and learn from, and that was certainly one that I learned a lot from, and I think we as an organization learned a lot from. And I think you see the result of that this past week. When we had the opportunity to address our players on Monday, we did that. And Terry and Kim put out a statement right. They were at the forefront of this as well. And so I think that says a lot about things that we've taken from that other experience, and as well as what we're trying to do and how we're trying to lead. And Brandon's been involved in this as well from the start. So, I just think, making ourselves available, making ourselves addressing the situation, to your point, head on, has been important and will continue to be important.
Thanks, Sean, and good seeing you.
Yeah, good to see you too, John. Thanks. I'm trying to catch you, John, with my beard too.
Sean, Steve White, can you hear me okay?
Got you, Steve. Good to see
Okay,
you.
great. To kind of follow up, you talked a lot about leadership here. You talked about, what Stephon Diggs and that group did down in Florida. And sometimes when players come in from other teams, kind of stepping in and engaging their ability to speak up and lead is not always the easiest thing. How have you found it? Because so much of this has been remote. I mean, with guys like Mario Addison, Stephon coming in, have they just kind of tried to stay in a lane, or have they tried to exert themselves a little bit?
Well, I think it's varied a little bit, and it's what you'd expect, Steve. There's guys that have asserted themselves from a leadership standpoint a little bit more, and so what I've found, what I've learned over the years, in our Super Bowl year in Carolina in particular, was we had some new players, some veteran players that had come in, and they really want to. There's an interesting dynamic in the locker room, right, in an NFL locker room, and very few times will you find a player that comes in right away and really, from a leadership standpoint, it does everything he can to get out in front right away, because there's such a earning it type of mentality in the locker rooms across NFL teams. And I learned that going through my time on that Super Bowl team. And so fast forward to this year, I've been, to your point, impressed with how a couple of our guys in particular that are new to our team have really asserted themselves, even though they have not yet met all of their teammates in person. And I think that's been really cool, because when you can do that, I think that really speaks of our culture, our existing culture, and it also speaks to who these individual players are and their DNA, that they feel comfortable saying, "Hey, listen, I'm here to win, and I know if we're going to win, I need to do my part in leading our football team." And so I think in unusual times call for unusual measures in certain moments. And I think that's been one of the positives of our off season to this point. I'm extremely grateful for it.
Would you mind sharing some names?
Well, you hit Mario Addison, AJ Klein, Quentin Jefferson, just there's a couple on the defensive side. On the offensive side, you mentioned a couple that there's already been a few mentioned, and even some of the rookies have really asserted themselves more so than normal. It's been a really good rookie class to this point on the Zoom meetings, albeit, but you find leaders kind of, coming to the forefront in that class as well, and in those meetings that we have that are just separate for the rookies. So a little bit different on the offensive side, just because of how we address things with the offense from a personnel standpoint. But it's been good to see, and Josh has driven a lot of that on the offensive side. John Feliciano has driven a lot of that as well, and John Brown, Cole Beasley. I mean, you're talking about a position in wide receivers that you don't always get that type of leadership, and to see John Brown and Cole Beasley do that, Andre Roberts the same way, and at that position. So we've got some good veteran leaders on this football team, and it's a key aspect for us as we move forward.
Hey, Sean, Josh Reed, thanks for taking the time. I think I speak for Jay as well. We do not recall this golf tournament that you're speaking of. But my question for you about
Jay, speak up. Jay, speak up. Speak up and tell him, huh?
The question for you about Leslie Frazier. Here's a guy who is so highly respected, not only amongst the coaching staff, but inside that locker room. How has Leslie help you and your staff and these players navigate through everything that's going on right now?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Good to see you. And we'll set the record straight, maybe off the record, when we play again at some point. You guys make sure you practice, though. You guys call me when you're ready. No, it's Leslie's has been a huge piece of our formula here in Buffalo. It's about people, right? I know I get a lot of credit. Brandon gets a lot of credit, and we certainly appreciate that. But at the end of the day, we haven't done this alone, and we've got great support in both of our staffs and everyone in our building. and Leslie's been a big part of that. And that's also part of the reason why we wanted to promote him and give him the title of assistant head coach. I mean, he's got a really good way about him. He has a history of playing in this league as well as coaching for a long time in this league. And one thing about Leslie that as you guys have got to know him is he's very even keeled, and he thinks things through. And I think I appreciate that. I know the staff and the players appreciate that. And he's very cool under pressure. So Leslie's been a great sounding board for myself. And it's been interesting to watch our relationship grow, knowing that we knew each other and coached with one another years ago with Andy Reid in Philadelphia. Then we were apart for a handful of years, and we stayed in touch. And now to be back together again, even in these, it's been 3 years going on 4, even in these 3 years, to watch our relationship grow. He has helped me in so many ways as a man, as a husband, father, son, and in my faith. And I know he's been a big part of the equation with our football team.
Hey, Coach, good to see you. Thanks again for the time here. Not only over the past week, but going forward, how do you intend to balance what is a very rising social and racial issue with your players while also trying to complete the work that you got to get accomplished, not only for training camp, but even going forward? I know you have the Social Justice Committee. I know you have your Leadership Council. Going forward, have you kind of laid out in your mind the way you have to pay this the proper attention, with knowing so many players, really all players are affected by this?
Yeah, Chris, good to see you. As a country, we're all affected by it, and including the players, where everyone's affected by this, right? And so I think the biggest thing, as a head coach, before I even became a head coach, I had done my research, as you guys know, and one of the reoccurring themes in head coaches that I spoke with was you get very little time to coach, to actually be a coach, a football coach, and that's real. And it's because of the leadership aspect of the job. And so if you had to break it down into a pie chart, it'd probably be my amount of time on X's and O's, especially in the first year, was very little. And now I've tried to manage my time better through experience and through obviously trusting staff to take some of that off my plate so that I can expose myself to the X's and O's more. But when things add up in a situation like this, where we have this going on, we've got obviously the COVID situation going on. And so you spend a lot of time, problem solving and making yourself available to dialogue and have conversations. And again, I go back to the people aspect of the job is real. And, you can have scheme, you can have that. And that's one of the things I've learned over the course of the last 10 years. You can have the scheme, you better have the scheme as a coach. But you also better be able to connect with people and have staff that can do the same. And my dad always taught me, my mom and dad both always taught me that, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that's a true fact. So, so we've tried to do that. We'll continue to try and make ourselves available and help facilitate our players and the action that they want to take in our community. And that's a big part of the social justice initiative that we formed, 2 or 3 years ago now.
Thanks.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, thanks for taking the time today. You mentioned the rookies, and, at this point, you probably would have had them at the facility about a month. Going through this process here virtually, what's been different, and maybe has it made you evaluate how you, onboard or rookies and bring them into the culture and the playbook and everything like that? What's this whole process been like with them?
Yeah, it's been interesting, Matt. Nothing's been normal, or very few things have been normal, and I would say those are the guys, that group, that class, as well as the veteran free agents, but in particular the rookies that are new to our football team. It's a big time uphill climb for them, because they don't know. Not only do they not know us, but they don't know our systems, our schemes. And then on top of that, you talk about transitioning to life in the NFL. That's a whole nother program that we've tried to, be on point with in Buffalo here with our development team, and the amount of time that they spend in helping these young men transition to life in the NFL. So it's been a challenge, and I think just awareness to that has been the first step, right? Awareness that there's a huge gap, and so we have to also then be realistic with potentially what could be their contribution level. We'll see early on in particular. So look, there could be a chance that if we don't come back until training camp, we'll see where that goes. But if we don't, that there's only basically 6 weeks and we're playing a real game that counts. And so what realistically, and just forget rookies now, I'm talking to the whole team, what realistically as coaches can we expect our players to do and get good at during that time? So it's there's ongoing conversations, and we've got to be at our best as a coaching staff and as an organization as we move forward through this.
Thanks, Sean.
Sure.
Coach, good morning. Mookie Hawkins, Waffle Sports 1080. How you doing?
Good, Mookie. Good to see you.
Great, great. Now, going into your 4th year, Coach, potentially this is probably on paper your best roster thus far. With all the outside noise predicting you to win the division this year, do you consider that good pressure? And how will you keep your young guys, level-headed, not to feed into the hype?
Yeah, games aren't won on paper.
Right.
I mean, that's the truth. Games aren't won on paper. That's the mindset we've embraced since we showed up here. If games were won on paper, we would have probably won 2 or 3 games the first year. That's probably what we were projected to win, and a handful of games the next year, and just over a handful of games last year. So I think that in and of itself is a great lesson for our football team, right, Mookie? And
yes, sir.
And you know it. And but having said that, listen, this is like I said before, this is it shows a sign of respect in terms of expectations. What people when expectations rise, it's a sign of respect that people have for what we've done and how we do things. That said, we embrace it. It's not going away, so we embrace it and we move forward and with and at the same time staying the course and knowing that we've got to earn it. You guys know we talk a lot about that here in Buffalo. Wins in the NFL don't come on paper. Wins in the NFL don't come in the off season. Wins in the NFL are a result of earning the right to win, and that starts in the off season, and it continues through the preseason and training camp, and then it goes into Sunday afternoons and Monday nights. So that's something that we certainly respect, and there's a lot of work in front of us at this point.
Thank you, Coach.
Sure, Mookie.
Hi, Coach. Jenna Cottrell out of Rochester. Hope you're doing well. I was just wondering, with the possibility that there's going to be a break until training camp, kind of what are your expectations for the players, and kind of what's the plan in place if there is one for them?
In terms of the break, Jenna, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my expectations on the break, are this I want the players to clearly understand what's expected on the break. And the longer we've been here, the better we've gotten at setting up our players in terms of handling that break at a high level. It's interesting because coaches in a normal year, we're going in through the spring, coaches and players both. And then coaches kind of take a break where they can get away for, 3 to 4 or 4 to 5 weeks. And then the players, though, need to understand that that's when they should be ramping up their training. And so it's a little bit of a paradox, if you will, in terms of the relationship. This year will probably be a little bit similar, but not normal as well for obvious reasons. And so what we're trying to do as information comes available to us is have the best plan in place so our players and staff know exactly what to expect. And I think with that clarity, and you guys know this, with clear or with clarity around what's expected, you can operate at a high level, and that's what we expect them to do, is to handle it well and be in the best shape of their lives and certainly make good decisions off the field.
Really quick, just as a follow-up, just your reaction. I know you touched on it a little earlier, but seeing the video of Josh and Stefan meeting for the first time, just kind of what went through your head.
Yeah. It's part of me was like, hey, that's pretty cool, and I'm smiling as I'm watching it, like you saw the video. And I'm appreciative of those two young men committing, going to those lengths to get together. Certainly aware of the social distancing aspect, so it made me a little bit uneasy in these times. Overall, though, it's fun to watch these guys get to know one another and come together and really become. It's cool when they can become teammates and really start to develop that love for one another.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah, thanks, Jenna.
Hi, Sean. Thanks for taking some time for us today. I know you mentioned that you learned a lot about, leading and things of that nature when you went through what you went through with the protest situation in 2017 and the way the organization handled everything. I'm curious, last weekend you're kind of seeing everything that's going on in the country and knowing that it just strikes me that there's a tremendous responsibility in that first message to the team, and what you're going to say. I'm wondering who you leaned on or what resources you sought out to make sure you were striking that right tone on Monday and striking the right balance, I guess, between the power that your words have, but also, like you mentioned, listening and kind of being a sounding board for guys.
Right, Matt. Good to see you as well. It's you're spot on with that. It's you want to make sure that you address. I wanted to make sure that we addressed it. Wanted to make sure that it was addressed in a genuine way, and I wanted to make sure that, to your point, that I counseled or got counsel from some of the members of our football team, staff included. And some people that I hold in high regard outside of our football team. And so, as you know, and you've gotten to know me, I do very few things on the spur of the moment. And so, but I also think that shows how deeply I care about our football team in terms of making that investment to make sure I learned and educated myself and was aware as I possibly could of all the different variables in things, and so that I was able to address everyone, because our team is a microcosm of the world. We all come from different locations geographically and different backgrounds. So. My goal was to address it. My goal was to show empathy, and my goal was to make myself available in our organization, as well as navigate our team or help navigate our team through this.
Outside of it being, obviously you're doing it over the computer this time, but what feels different this time as opposed to 2017? And I guess, is there any, I'm sure for a lot of us, there's disappointment that we're back here, talking about a lot of the same things, but what feels different this time around? And what do you hope will be better, I guess?
Well, I would say from an organizational standpoint, it was referenced earlier, that was our first year together, myself and Brandon, with Terry and Kim, from a leadership standpoint. And so there were definitely conversations the night before, I believe it was the Denver game in 2017. And we had, and so, it's important that we continue to dialogue. But just knowing where Terry and Kim now being together through that situation and many other shared experiences, knowing how they feel, I think it's just kind of when you develop that trust and that strong relationship, you don't even have to almost look to your left. You already know how they're going to respond, or I think they know how I'm going to respond, or I know how Brandon's going to respond, and vice versa. And so that's a nice, comforting thing to have in the relationships we've built over these years. And so, yeah, it's, there's a lot to learn yet. And I think that's, one of the other things I share with our team is, you talk about those words that begin with the letter L, the love, the listen, learn is a big part of it as well. And then lead from there.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, Salsi, you can go, man.
Sorry about that. I was talking and I wasn't muting myself. Technology. Coach, sorry about that.
No, that's day two Zoom etiquette, man.
I get you. Yeah, I have to go back and read the manual. Coach, can you give us an idea of attendance so far through off-season workouts, virtually, and obviously a lot of moving parts here, but what do you think about the attendance and the turnout with your guys?
Yeah, I've been very, very, very impressed. Guys have been consistent. Obviously, sometimes, things come up like they do for all of us. But overall, very impressed and appreciative as well of the commitment, of the participation, and of the communication as well.
Hey, Coach, how you doing? It's Jay.
Jay, my golf partner. There he is, finally.
Hey, before I asked any question, I just wanted to show you this. This is in case you hadn't seen
What
it.
did you do? Army crawl on the floor back there so no one saw you pick it up?
Oh, it's right behind me. It's right there. I just turn around, I can reach it. So I was just waiting for the right time.
Must have been those Jordan golf shoes you were sporting that day.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's it. That's all I wanted to show you. No, I'm just kidding. We know that you're in this Zoom off-season program, right? But can you give us as many specifics, I guess, as possible as to what it looks like on a day-by-day or maybe even week-by-week basis? I mean, what exactly are the guys doing? Are coaches going through plays? Just how does it look, I guess?
Right. So a look behind the curtain for our team, and it may be different for other teams, but for our team is we'll start in the morning with some rookie meetings, just to give the rookies just their own chance to get comfortable with their position coach, ask questions that they have burning in their head maybe from the day before, and then on normal days, then they'll come together. We'll come together as a team, potentially in a team meeting format, or we'll go right into unit meetings, offense, defensively, and then special teams. Got involved in the last probably 3 or 4 weeks. In the first couple of weeks, we did not involve special teams just to make it a little more offense and defense based and get them going with a good foundation that way. And then the rookies end up the day back with their position coaches, and then also in the rookie development program that is led by our development team, Len Vanden Boss and his staff. And so what that really does is work on, again, as I mentioned before, transitioning to life in the NFL and off the field.
Thanks. And then, Sean, I wanted to follow up on one thing that was from earlier this offseason. There was a story written about the culture within PSC right now, and there was a reference made to possibly some concern on your part regarding a low morale within the company. I don't believe that you have been asked about that since that point. Is there anything that you can comment on or you would like to say about that, about the morale within the company and your feelings on it?
Yeah, any concern that I have Jay is addressed directly to Terry and Kim. And then outside of that, overall, I'm encouraged by where things are going. As you know, when we arrived here a few years ago, I think things have changed drastically since that time. And I'm focused on the Bills, and I'm focused on leading a football team and an organization along with Brandon Beane to the best of my ability. And I'm excited about the future. I really am. And I'm excited about the people we have brought on board. And it's to me, obviously that no one wants what's going on now and the challenges that we have, but it's an exciting time in Buffalo, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Jay.
Hey, Sean, it's Sal. Let me clarify here. I was your partner that day at that tournament, and I have always owned that I sucked that day. So let's just get that out there. I let you down, and I've always owned it. So just wanted to clarify.
Hey, Sal. So you basically sent me to, that was my last dance. I know Jay wore the Jordans, but that was Sean McDermott's last dance. He sent me into retirement on the golf course, man. I haven't golfed since.
And now I've retired because my shoulder's destroyed. So we're both done. I'll wrap it up real quick. Have you been given any direction by the league in terms of, would it be possible to hold a slightly longer training camp at your facility because you've had such, no practices at all? And secondly, any direction on preseason games? Have you been told what's going to happen? Are you going to play all four? Do you have any direction on stuff like that?
Right, Sal. So what I know to this point is that as far as the preseason games go, that we are expected to play on schedule. That's the latest that I know from the league. I'm sure more information will be forthcoming where and as necessary. And then the other what was your other question about? Was
in terms of training camp, do you think you'll be allowed maybe to have a slightly longer camp because you've lost all these practices leading up to camp?
Right. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think that those will be things that the league and the NFLPA discuss amongst themselves, and I do think that certainly we've seen the injury. When you go back to 2011, the last time we had a work stoppage or anything, not to put those two in the same category with COVID situation now, because they're not, but anytime we've been away like this, we saw a spike in injuries that year. And so we want to make sure, and whether we do get extended time or not, that we as a coaching staff do our best to acclimate our players early on in the training camp process.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Thanks everybody for your time. Appreciate it, Sean.
Great to see everyone. Thank you, guys.